So the boys and I, Jeff Ballabon, Dave Reaboi, we was wondering, what can we talk about today? Of course, you're not seeing this today, but today for us is the day after Election Day. I think we'll find something to talk about. But first, Jeff, Dave, all those in favor of censorship, say aye. All those...
No.
That's
okay.
Quiet. That's I get some quiet.
Are
I
you
don't
anyone
hear
against
anything.
censorship? Oh, well, they might have been censored. So it's going to be
against censorship.
Yes,
That's the right
I'm gonna register my vote against censorship.
against censorship. Okay, so now we've now hit our topical minimum requirement, and we can talk about the election. All right, Jeff, one thing you said before we started culminating was if there had been a little bit more attention paid to New Jersey, you think we could have done it.
So close.
Wait. Look, wait. We didn't do it?
We didn't
Well, it's not
quite
all
it's not-
over yet.
It's looking, by the time this airs, we'll know whether or not we did it, I think.
Okay,
Right.
the cemeteries in Newark and Patterson have still yet to be
That will
done.
not help us.
Yeah, without even necessarily going there, I'm not quite sure. It's a genuinely tight race. I mean, there are millions of people in New Jersey who legitimately are happy with being told what to do every aspect of their
They're
lives.
called husbands.
Yeah, my wife doesn't watch the podcast either. Okay, so what do you think? So assuming that if we did do it, then thank God we did it. But if we didn't do it by the time this airs, Jeff, what do you think could have been done differently?
Let's put it this way. If we did it, it should have been a shellacking if we eked it out. If we didn't eke it out, we should have eked it out. First of all, going into this for weeks, obviously the pollsters, it's still unbelievable that there's a business model that allows people to pay them money. Pollsters were saying that Youngkin was behind, McAuliffe was ahead in Virginia, and that Jersey wasn't even really close, right? That was ridiculous. So obviously we all knew that Youngkin was ahead at least 2 or 3 points, even including the margin of fraud in Virginia, and that Murphy was really on the skids. It was going to be very tight, and it turned out it is very tight in New Jersey. But it's frustrating. I was just looking at I wasn't looking at this in any scientific way, but somebody sent around the numbers in Lakewood, New Jersey, where it was 1/3 of the turnout on the Republican side since, from the last election, and about equivalent on the Democrat side. And that is painful.
How did that, isn't that anomalous with the rest of the results, for example, in Virginia?
So look, the Lakewood thing, I know I don't want to jump right down this rabbit hole. The Lakewood thing is,
what's wrong with these people? Everywhere else,
I
there was high Republican turnout.
Right. I think there was a difference that it's sort of a company town, and the leadership was pushing an agenda of the incumbent and sort of common wisdom, which is not particularly smart. And the base disagrees with it. So the base comes out strong for Trump, and they're motivated because Trump's a motivating kind of big personality. And this one, they figure Murphy's not so terrible. And
he's working with us. He's working with us.
Right. Oh, wait, Ron, that's the wrong hand motion. He's working with us.
Right.
We're gonna get in so much trouble. Okay. No, but honestly, that's what it comes down to, which is, money for institutions, et cetera, et cetera. And so it seems to be a disconnect. The base did seem to come out for pretty nicely, for Citarella, but the numbers were suppressed. They didn't really generate. Listen, I live in the Nassau County in New York, and there was an upset race here also that we knew was going to be very tight for supervisor. And my friend Bruce Blakeman, give him a plug. It looks like, he declared victory, so he won, and that was an upset. And again, low voter turnout in areas which could have given him a dominating lead.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm from Jersey.
What exit?
What exit? I'm from Morristown and Parsippany. and which is where I grew up. My folks left in 2000, so they've been out of there for more than 20 years.
Did you see the numbers from Morristown that they were sharing around last night?
No, tell me.
Crazy. I don't know if it held, but crazy Republican numbers from Morristown.
So when I was a kid, Morris County was the most, we were proud to be the most Republican county in America. And it was always between Orange County and Morris County, which was very weird. If you think about it, all of our mayors were Republicans, and so it's almost like a kind of reverse DC situation where like the mayors would go to jail and they'd come out, they'd get reelected, and it's just no problems. But I mean, I've seen what's happened to Morristown in particular over the last several years. I mean, it's really become, it was never as much of a bedroom community to Manhattan as it once was. But now, I mean, I'm seeing, just in the last couple of years, and forget about the last 20, so much development in this place. It's the city itself is basically unrecognizable and let's say Whole Foodsified or gentrified in a kind of blue direction. Right. So I assumed it would.
Same thing with Montclair, where I'm sitting right now. These used to be New Jersey. You were from New Jersey, you did well, and then you got a house in unincorporated Morris County, or in Morristown, or West Essex somewhere. And now, no, it's where people flee from the city because where Jeff lives has become too expensive.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
wow.
I was
nice
born
digging out there.
I was born in Elizabeth, and my family moved from Elizabeth to Morris County.
You were born in Elizabeth, but your parents grew up in Newark.
My parents, my parents, when they got here, they.
That's right. You're a foreigner.
Yeah. I'm a first generation. My parents, when they came to the United States, Dad was in Newark and Mom was in Elizabeth the whole time.
I'm first generation too, but wait, Dave, you were born in this country?
Yes. In Elizabeth Hospital.
Yeah. Where?
Elizabeth Hospital in New Jersey. Yeah.
No, I'm also the first one in my family born in this country.
From where?
Father from England and mother from then Poland, now Ukraine.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. I've just got that on one half. My mother.
I'm sorry, what?
My mother is from Cuba.
Right.
Poland by way of Cuba. So
Poland by way of Cuba is an interesting mix, and I once thought it was very uncommon, but apparently it's not as uncommon as I had thought. I mean, a lot of Jews kind of went through Cuba.
We had a lot of family ended up in Argentina. A lot of people ended up in south of the border kind of countries.
Anyway,
to the election, in regards to the election, I kind of woke up this morning and I thought that I was surprised. I thought of the late great Bob Grant, who I grew up listening to on the radio, who used to say, "Never overestimate the intelligence of the New Jersey voter." And I just assumed for all this time. I mean, I laughed at people who thought it would even be close. But it's a good reminder. I mean, I was thinking of I mean, even if the Republican doesn't eke it out somehow, and they find votes in wherever they find votes, it's still kind of heartening. I don't expect much out of Jersey at all. I don't expect anything out of Jersey but disaster. So,
check this out. Morris County. Look at it. Morris County. That's Somerset. Union, Essex.
Morris is the big one to the left.
Look at Essex. Crazy, huh? Morris, 57-43.
No, okay. Amazing.
So that should not even be remotely, because this is Biden. That is Biden country. Essex, of course, that's a highly urban. But look at horse country. 51-49. I'm getting down south. Red.
Yeah, you compare this map to what it looked like just a couple of years ago. It looks very different.
Well, David and I grew up in a state that was represented, that consistently had Republican governors.
Right.
And our idea of a Democrat was Bill Bradley. I mean, that
Right.
you know,
Yep.
that was a moderate Republican. All right, but what's the big picture, Dave? I mean, late Republic.
Yeah.
Well, let me take a step back before we get into your big thesis here. All we heard from our friends and many of our good friends was, we're never going to win any elections again because it's all cooked. They've got the playbook now to cheat their way into every election, and certainly a red state. And to be a red state, you just have to have one vote more, and you control law enforcement, you control the judiciary, you control the state house. You can't successfully challenge any of the irregular voting practices. And for years, Jeff, as you know, you and I have discussed this a million times, Republicans have ignored this reality and have shrugged their shoulders, and I mean the leadership, and said, listen, what are we afraid of? We're going to always lose in the blue districts. Let's not rock the boat. We'll outvote. We'll overcome it with enthusiasm elsewhere. And it's worked out until fairly recently. Is this result in Virginia going to make us lazy again and ignore how did it even happen? Is it a myth? Speak to me.
Look, I mean, it's a good question. Since all this has happened, I've been thinking about it and kind of in preparation to writing a piece. Because last week I wrote a piece about how none of this really matters anyway, and especially in regards to really what happens in blue states. I mean, it's gravy. I think we should celebrate what happened in terms of we should celebrate what happened in terms of a victory. I mean, and it's absolutely right. We should understand what that victory means and where it came from. But I don't think we should allow ourselves to get high on our own supply here. I think it's very clear that a blue state is still a blue state with a red governor. The likelihood that we're going to see, Rudy Giuliani in the 90s in New York City, completely change the way of governing in a city or in a state. I think is kind of, I mean, those days are gone. The radicalism of the Democrat Party is just too great. I think the gulf is too wide to kind of come together and make sane policy. But that said, like, hey, we should celebrate. I mean, we got these victories, and what do I think is the most important part about it? I think it's the fact that the CRT issue, or more broadly speaking, like the naked racialism of the Democrats at this point in time, and their obsession with it. I mean, it's very clear. Look, when Terry McAuliffe shows up for his closing argument with Randy Weingarten, this is a campaign and this is a party that is completely owned and directed by and funded by the teachers.
International Zionists. Oh, I'm sorry.
I
thought I was obvious for me where you were going with this.
Right. So
carpetbagging has become such a large part of the Democratic Party's playbook now. I mean, the idea that you can take someone from first of all, McAuliffe himself is not from Virginia. But he is of Northern Virginia. He is a man of that poly. Yeah. But Randy Weingarten, like you're saying, I mean, we're really in different worlds. Jeff, what are your thoughts?
A lot, as they say, to unpack. So first of all, it's interesting that I've been spending a lot of time in Virginia the last few weeks. And what I was trying to understand was how much of what the bubble talks about has leaked outside the bubble. In other words, is McAuliffe's crack about teachers not having any space to be involved in education, which leads to the National School Boards Association and that letter and Merrick Garland, they don't fight about our concerned parents actually terrorists. That's great grist for the pundit mill, but I'm not sure how much people know about it. Loudoun County, Virginia, that story, that actually broke through. That's something that people heard loud and clear throughout Virginia. But who says that they blame McCall for it? It's the Loudoun County School Board. So it could be that they say, yeah, well, look, the Democrats have gone nuts. They're putting boys in dresses in girls' rooms. They're letting them rape kids and then sending them back to other schools. Maybe. It also could be, they're paying $87 a gallon for gas and they can't make their mortgage payments and their kids are sitting at home instead of going to school. This, the comprehensive collapse of every Democrat idea and its manifestation in real people's lives makes it almost impossible to suss out what it exactly pushed people in what direction. So I don't know what the truth is of that.
Have you picked up at Jeff? You must have noticed by now that no one on the left acknowledges that they're too far left.
Sure.
Why do we choose such a soft to moderate?
Last night I didn't watch Fox last night. I was watching CNN, which, by the way, declared for Youngkin at least a half an hour before Fox did.
Yeah, well, okay, no one understands.
I watch CNN. I'll be honest, Schadenfreude. I mean, really, where am I going to get a hit like that besides MSNBC?
I heard MSNBC is where the good stuff is.
Okay, fine.
Nicole Wallace had a complete meltdown. That's great.
I'm very torn. This is what I'm torn. This goes to what David's been fighting lately. I'm very torn. Part of me is, dear Democrats, I don't really care about parties, Republicans, Democrats, but for all of our sake, could you just re-sideline the maniacs and get back to being just incompetent leftists as opposed to total maniac, insane people? Because then maybe we can move forward, and keep on finding our balance on the issues that we should be fighting about, as opposed to core cultural ideas of what exists and what doesn't exist. All right, we're now debating reality. I just don't know if it's too far for that. And for a long time, I haven't written in a long time. And I started writing, and David, you don't know this because I didn't publish it. I started writing about the issue of national divorce a couple of weeks ago and then pulled short. I stopped writing because I felt like it's too late for all of this. And I think that the discussion of national divorce, it's a good benchmark for how freaking crazy we've all gotten, that we're thinking about we're going to divide the country, but we can't. There is no modus vivendi that's reasonable. There is no coexistence possible. So we're looking for solutions that I think are also unreasonable, but I just think it's over.
And that came out when Dave was talking about, a Rudy Giuliani, a red governor. It's city versus state within states. New York is 2 states. New Jersey is 2 states. Virginia is 2 states.
We could turn this into so actually what I want to do is, number one, David, I want to actually invite you to a separate conversation. Ron, you're welcome to be there. Also, just about national divorce.
The more you talk, the less work I have to do.
Okay. No. But I just wanted to do that. No, it doesn't have to be this session.
It has to be this session.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
No, but last night.
Oh, you want it for yours?
No, I'll do it on ColemanNation. Whatever. Last night, you get this glimmer of hope that normal people are finally lashing out, but it doesn't seem that the Democrats are hearing it at all. The Democrats, not just the nuts, are saying, yeah, well, what happens? You're there and you're not passing the legislation. You're not pushing our agenda through. Really? That's the problem. We haven't actually installed boys in every girls' room. We haven't mandated abortion for what's going on here?
We haven't cut the checks for $400,000 per illegal.
Why only 450? Why not 750?
Well, I tweeted it out, which is obviously the lessons are 1 million an immigrant, mandating abortion, like going through the list of things that they haven't gone far enough.
Oh, I missed that tweet. I want to find that.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, that's where we are. I mean, as you said, Jeff, we're in the realm of debating reality.
Yeah.
Which is not a thing that you can do if you're trying to maintain a unified polity. You just can't. You can talk about different interpretations of of how to get to the place where, you all agree it would be beneficial, but I mean, you can't agree on reality. I mean, what do you have that, that unifies you? Yeah, I mean, it's, I think you're right about that when it comes to, what is that? Oh, okay, there we are. No, I think you're right about that when it comes to the fact that at the end of the day, we really don't know. We really don't know if someone is voting because they're like, you know what, this CRT thing is complete, insane nonsense.
Right.
Or, hey, it's a Democrat in there now and my life sucks. I'm going to vote for the other team. I mean, high IQ voting versus low IQ voting versus, low information, high information, what have you. But I do think there are a couple things that managed to break through. The election that we did not talk about, which I didn't even know was happening, was a special election in San Antonio in Texas, in a D+14 district, or at least Biden won 14 points over Trump this last time, and this was in I think a 73% Hispanic area.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, San Antonio is, I mean, a lot of people who are not from Texas don't know. I mean, San Antonio is a Democrat machine place. It's not a place where Republicans win elections, and it hasn't been for quite some time, really, if ever. And so this was a huge earthquake that
let's talk about a lot to unpack there, because if this is about where Latinos are coming from on this, there's a lot, and hasta Latino, I can tell you that just like all generalizations about all Jews and all Asians and all blacks.
Well, the ones about Jews are right.
Who are you to say?
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, Democrats assume that interest groups and ethnic groups follow certain pre-assigned roles. And Latinos are much more complex than that. I mean, obviously, I don't have to tell you, Dave, you're down there in Florida, Cubans and Dominicans ain't the same politically, or in a lot of ways. San Antonio, you would think, would be presumably overwhelmingly Mexican in terms of the Latino population there. The thinking is, I imagine, putting myself in the mind of a Democratic strategist, Mexican immigrants want more immigration because it's their family members. It worked for them. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of the people in San Antonio are beginning to feel and sound a lot more like Cubans. We waited our turn. We've been here 20, 30 years. And by the way, those aren't Mexicans who are coming over the border. I'll tell you a little secret to you. Not all blacks like Hispanics. Not all Hispanics like blacks. Not all blacks like homosexuals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The fact that you can posit this sort of white thing and that everything that's not the white thing is going to be the other thing, that's a fallacy.
That is the Democrat game. A long time ago, the GOP asked me, how Jews vote. And I thought about it. And one of my conclusions was, the Democrats have nailed this because their entire approach to every group is, we are going to save you from your oppressor, right? And so who's your enemy? So there's a relevant other. So for blacks, the relevant other is whites. For homosexuals, the relevant other is straight people. For women, the relevant other is men. And for Jews, the relevant other is, well, if you look at every Democrat approach throughout, it's a variant of white supremacist, Nazi, Christian, because the relevant actual majority in this country to Jew is Christian, right? And they equate all of those. And that's the game they play. And so it is very much just picking up individual groups. And so what unites Latinos in that worldview isn't anything about what they think or don't think. It's that there is something that they're not. There's a relevant majority that they're not. And that's the game Democrats have played. It's no longer as interesting to a lot of people. It's not interesting because it's not delivering results, and it's not interesting because people are less and less and less segregated in this country in terms of just reality in life. And that's why Democrats are so desperate to segregate us again and create this idea again that, this is built in stone, and don't believe your lying eyes.
Is it possible that the them versus us game is not working anymore, except among a very well-defined?
I certainly hope so. But I mean, I think to piggyback with the point that you made before about let's say blacks and Hispanics and other groups. I mean, you live by the identity politics sword, you die by it as well. And I can tell you with a lot of the Hispanics here in South Florida, a party that goes in on BLM is not necessarily going to be a party that's embraced by a lot of let's say non-ideologically left Hispanics
or blacks.
Right.
I've had a very nice run of fantastic black guests who are conservatives, but they're not like weirdos. They're just people who are Americans. And they're increasingly allowing them, they're being heard and they're not being intimidated. And, when you have tweets like the one from Howard Dean last night, racism still works in Virginia.
By the way, have you seen or heard the new Lieutenant Governor of Virginia? So I was in Washington a couple weeks ago, and she was meeting with this group, and she was talking, and she's hysterically good. She's fearless, and she is patriotic, and she is incredibly great and fun to listen to. So if you catch their clips of her acceptance last night.
I have heard great things about her. Yeah.
Yep. Marine, married to a Marine, absolutely without fear, loves this country. Also first generation, her father came over. Actually, no, she was born in Jamaica. She's legitimate. She herself, her father brought her over when she was very young. But and that's the thing, the whole notion that we're divided by these externalities, it literally doesn't exist on our side. And I'm not talking about our side of the aisle. I mean, our side of thinking. If we go with sort of what David's been writing a lot about, and what I've been thinking a lot about also, which is less about the political divide and more about the cultural divide. Oh my gosh, it's astonishing that that this activist gay black conservative is getting along well with this activist Orthodox Jewish conservative. It's not at all. We all want the same country. We all want to live and let live country where we're actually not being judged by ridiculous externalities. And the left can't. But what's amazing to me is there are times that I can't believe they actually believe it. And then I hear them and I realize they just keep on digging their hole deeper. They actually believe it.
Right. I mean, to be a black pill here for a second, or to deliver one. I mean, I think that's great. And that's possible when you have the external force of an insane McAuliffe campaign type of situation where you say, okay, here are a bunch of lefties who are, let's face it, predominantly, white, predominantly wealthy, predominantly urban, certain, let's say, certain type of person coming in and saying insane things like, denying biological reality, or pushing CRT, racialist insanity. I mean, that's the thing that could hold a coalition together for a while. But in the long haul, I think at the end of the day, it's really one of two things. It's either we are united by race, religion, history, something very tangible, or we are united by a propositional creed. And that's great. That's what has been our history so far, pretty much, especially in the last 100 years or so. But the question is, how do you keep a lid on it? How do you keep that propositional creed consistent? throughout the passage of time? And that's a really open question.
Yeah, we've lost that consensus on
Right.
key issues. And the fact that it became a routine thing to say, lose the Senate sucks, let's reform the Senate. Lose the Supreme Court, pack the court. Whatever isn't, and Jeff and I wrote an article about the Electoral College back when we were writing partners, right? What was that?
Back when our beards weren't white.
Back when they were in our faces.
Yeah.
That's part of it, is this idea that we're going to talk about, if the system doesn't work for us, we're going to change it, but also we're not going to even talk about the changes we're going to make. A and B, the shared values have cracked up completely.
Well, it's not even a question of shared values. I actually go along with David as to how bad it is. I just think it's worse than he says it is. In other words, that's really my problem here. My problem isn't that I'm not suggesting that there can be some reconciliation. People are always, do you know what time it is? It's like, no. It's way past that time. Barbarians are at the gate. No, barbarians have full control. They've been on the throne, at the throttle. They're in control of all of it. All right. And because the politics is way downstream, it's not just culture, it's language, it's everything. And I don't think there's any way back. I think it's so far gone. Well, and you've seen this, David, because some of the reactions to what you write, they cannot tolerate our existence. They wouldn't tolerate existence whether we're with them or separate from them, because our existence, they sense our existence as an attack on theirs. This is an evolutionary war. It goes well beyond America, because of its greatness and its freedom, has allowed it to play itself out here.
And it's going to just simmer, because you can't have a pitched battle.
Well, there will be a pitched battle. Well, I don't know if there will be. Among the likely outcomes is not Dave's hope for some kind of negotiated separation. Among the likely outcomes is, you tell enough people they're evil for long enough, you abuse them for long enough, they're going to react. All right. And the people who are going to react are not going to be the temperate ones who are thought out. They're going to react because they're angry, and rightfully so. They're right to be angry. And I just feel as though the two sides that are going to battle that out, the one side that's already fully engaged in a war for survival, which is to say the left, because they've been battling against empirical reality their entire existence, and having freedom. It's when there's an overlay, an oppressive overlay, you don't have a chance to battle against empirical freedom. You're fighting that oppressive overlay. In this country, they're fighting against empirical reality, which is why up is down, right is left, and boys are girls. All right. And now, Pat, I don't know if you saw this a couple of weeks ago, Ron, you may have noticed a judge granted human rights in court to an animal, to a hippopotamus, to be specific. Right. So babies aren't people, but hippopotami are. But again, it's one of those things, you laugh or you cry.
Right.
They're just it's not insane. Only late Republic stuff, Jay. It's late Empire stuff. This is Caligula level.
Yeah. So my question is, late Republic could mean like it's 11:59 and it's late, or late means like rest in peace.
Ended.
I think we're at rest in peace Republic.
Oh, right. Late as the late Republic.
Yes. So I think that. I just think that however this resolution occurs, it will be organic and violent and not negotiated and towards a particular solution or goal.
Yeah,
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I read about national divorce, I wasn't urging some kind of negotiated settlement or an immediate separation, largely frankly because I think we'd lose. What that whole line of thinking is intended to do, from my perspective, is to get people to start thinking in new ways, and frankly to urge people to action when it comes to creating the institutions that we need for ourselves in order to make a go of it. We can't make a go of it as it is. We would need a new financial system. We would need new insurance companies. We would need everything. So me talking about it kind of this way, trying to, let's say, raise the rhetorical stakes, I think makes possible having those conversations, at least, opens that cognitive space for people to say, okay, maybe this is a thing I can do. Maybe this is a thing that I can do with my business, is to retool it specifically to tailor to, like, the 73 or more million people in this country who, voted for Donald Trump, or who dissent from, like, the left's cultural orthodoxy.
So one of the problems, and I don't know if we talked about it last time, is I find that when, and I'm talking for myself, I'm pretty sure it applies to you guys, but I'm not going to assert that most of the time when I'm making arguments, and this is, again, one of the reasons I stopped, the arguments are about the thing itself. And I realize that most people don't even know why they should care. Right. So if we look at our Twitter feeds, I imagine there'll be a lot of overlap. We look at most other people's Twitter feeds, and it's mostly about popular music and sports or whatever else it is. And people don't even recognize why they should care. And the question is, how do you engage people in? So Virginia may be a good example of where all of a sudden, again, if this is the reason, if the reason actually is what happened in Loudoun County, what happened with the debate over textbooks, to the degree that all of a sudden that burst out into people's consciousness, that may have been a trigger. And if that's what happened, then the question is, how do you burst into people's consciousness before there's a crisis? And maybe that's what you're trying to do. I don't know. I think most people are utterly disengaged. They try to get engaged. What do? Well, they go turn on the news. Well, that's great, because if you ever wanted to not know what's going on, you turn on the news, right? And then you're right back to being spun, by the way, by both sides with talking points that are equally inane, right? So if you're not actually paying close attention to it, I don't know that you care. To me, the question is engagement. It's the first.
Sure.
Before you get to making the arguments, how do you get enough people to care about it?
Sure. Look, I mean, I think external events push people in that direction, in many ways. I mean, COVID, for sure, has changed a lot of things. I mean, I can tell you in my life, I know a lot of people who were previously not engaged in political life at all, zero. They didn't know who their governor was, and they didn't know even that they should care who their governor was. Now with COVID, they're understanding that, yes, there's a difference between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis, between Phil Murphy and Greg Abbott. There are real differences in the parties today, and let's say in governing philosophy. And you vote for Democrats in Virginia today, you get a whole bunch of nonsense, that you didn't even think about before. And I think, COVID itself, just to get back to that, COVID was so huge in terms of this, and I guess you saw it in 2020, and the kind of the build up to the election, where I saw a lot of people who were not ordinarily political, who were sort of getting engaged. But now it's so plain to see how politics can have an effect on your daily life. After COVID, that you're getting a lot more engagement. Now, of course, as things progress and shit gets real, and the late republic moves from let's say, how does Mark Levin say, like a passive tyranny to an active tyranny, then I think more people will sort of come online, so to speak, with regards to this.
So that's interesting. You say come online, and that has multiple meanings. I asked my barber, who is a Latino, a younger man than myself, an increasingly more common species. I guess that's axiomatic, isn't it? Where he gets his news and information. because he was sounding kind of woke. And a lot of it was coming out of just what you're saying, Dave, coming out of his frustration with what the hell's going on, what's happening to our world. And he says, oh, I don't listen to the news anymore. They don't tell you anything. They don't tell you anything. I go onto Twitter. I don't tweet. I go to see just what are people saying. I think the shift is happening. And, I think the issue is that there are elites who still run a lot of things, and they maintain their grip on, or their grips on, the controls of a lot of power and a lot of information, but not all of it. And it's a leaky dam. And I really do think that dam is really starting to become unpluggable for them. Even with all the increased efforts at censorship, it's the kind of thing that has to almost work perfectly. And an argument that I've made for a while is that American society, for all the poor analogies in how societies become very authoritarian to totalitarian, none of them starts with a society that has anything like the First Amendment, or even a tradition of free speech. Now, what's going on in Australia? That's a Commonwealth country. That's a fantastic and awful case study. I'm hoping we're not looking at the end of it. I'm hoping we're looking at the middle of it, and that something's going to crack the way things, to some extent, cracked socially and in terms of consensus in France. But I don't know.
I think Australia itself is a little more akin to the UK than to America in terms of its own traditions of related to those kinds of fundamental freedoms. But I think America really stands alone in the sort of the social fabric that comes along with that. I mean, I don't know if this is part of the same conversation, but something that occurred to me both in an early comment that you made, Dave, and a later comment you made, Ron. It was really about the campaigns and who runs the campaigns and what they think about it, and about the strategists who are thinking about the party. But I think it goes beyond that. And I'm not sure this is a separate conversation, but for some reason it's pounding in my head here, which is, here's a little dirty secret about Washington. Okay, there is literally not one person in all of Washington, industry town Washington, all of governmental Washington, that's actually being incentivized to solve anybody's problems. Okay, that doesn't mean there aren't people who go down there who want to solve problems. It just means there's no incentive structure to promote it. But that's also true, and that comes in concentric circles. Just like there's no one in the media being incentivized to tell the unvarnished truth as best they can, and there's nobody.
The incentives are to the contrary.
Well, okay, and there's nobody in many cases. That's right, and there's nobody in campaign world who's actually incentivized to win campaigns. They're incentivized to get more clients, but that's not always winning campaigns. And so we have, when people in virtually every other sphere besides this big colossus that we've built and its concentric circles, right? Which goes back to this notion of an overlay over reality, which is in our country, thankfully, has always been centered in these kinds of pockets, as opposed to reaching out until recently into all of our lives. It almost, people just had no concept of it whatsoever. They didn't understand. I have a great idea, and I should be able to bring it to Washington, and that idea should pass. And it's just, well, no. If, let's say your great idea is free energy for everybody, and it's only going to cost 20 cents. That's great. But what you're actually now walking into a web that's constructed on just endless billions and billions and billions of dollars of energy costs. That is a phenomenal engine, and also a web that ties people together. And you're the disruptor. So there's no part of any of this infrastructure that runs our country and that informs about the country and that guides the country is actually incentivized in a positive way for any of us. And I don't know that could ever change. That's just reality.
Was it ever different?
I think that the founding fathers did what they could to build bulwarks against it. And I think that's what the Federalist Papers, that's what the Constitution, that's what they tried to do, because it never could be any different.
Right.
And we're all also so much less intelligent and capable than prior generations. It seems that I mean, if we're talking about the folks, I mean, we all know that we all are familiar with, let's say, the folks who populate these communities within the Beltway. The level of intelligence and capability just keeps dropping one generation after another, to the point where, I mean, here we are. I think at least, I mean, the other thing with these people is that I think we no longer have a sense of honor in our culture, and that is translated into an elites with a lack of honor, or even aspirations to honor. And the other effect that it has, which I'm sure you guys will agree, is it ends up, when you're talking to normal people who have a normal, they operate in the normal world with normal incentive structures and things like that. And when they see what goes on inside DC or in government, or frankly, increasingly in elite institutions, even in the business world,
corporate boardroom,
they just look at it and they're like, there must be a conspiracy here. It must be something nefarious, because
rent seeking. It's
right.
all
yes,
rent seeking.
It's
how do you get a piece of the action and hold on to it for dear life and grow it? That's all.
Right.
I just want to do an aside here, because Ron and I, no doubt, cracking up at the same thing when you're talking about how our generations are getting successively worse. Just so you know, there's an Aramaic phrase that Ron and I know well, Niskat no adoros, that the generations get worse. And the narrative goes this way in traditional Judaism, which is, forget about I'm not getting into the technical arguments about Torah at Sinai and evolution, anything else. But if your narrative is built on the idea that God revealed himself at Sinai, and that was the high point, and so we constantly look back towards that greatness, right? If your narrative is we descend from apes, and that's the most salient issue, then we're constantly realizing that we look forward towards greatness and we revere nothing about the past, right? That played itself out not that long ago with Clinton versus Dole, right? When one was talking about, Dole wanted to look back to, because he was part of, the greatest generation. And Clinton started talking about a bit toward the future, and the left was mocking the notion of looking backwards. And even that concept, which we have going back, many centuries in Jewish thought, is playing
the last 2 years tearing down statues.
Right, exactly. It's this notion that what we come from, we are even Obama's arc, this whole long moral arc. We debase everything, all tradition, everything we come from. The entire history is definitionally evil, and frankly, I blame The Simpsons.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, look, we have to. Not we have to, but they have to. In order to have a, in order for their ideology to make sense at all, they have to.
And that's Marxism.
In order to get the change.
Dialectic materialism is about it is a religious doctrine. Yeah. And it says that there's a force, a natural force of history that requires that following things will happen, and that progress takes place by virtue of this force. And it is a move from feudalism to capitalism to socialism to communism, and that's progress. Whereas, as we've all recognized, there are many things about the ancient world that we would, all three of us, feel extremely uncomfortable with, but there's a hell of a lot more that the ancients would feel uncomfortable with in this world.
Listen, as fun as this is, though, let's be honest, very few people are thinking about this at this level, or thinking about it philosophically, or people are, I think, reacting to what's in front of them, and they're reacting to what's in front of them, again, whether it's, gas prices are through the roof, or my kids are home and it's driving me crazy because it makes no sense, or they're trying to torture them with masks, or seriously, you could put a boy in a dress, he's still a boy. Don't tell me that my eyes are lying eyes. And that itself, have we gone past the point where we can't tell anybody that stuff. They're going to have to see it on their own. And the question is, are they going to see it in time, and what thing gets done about it?
And this is actually interesting, Jeff, because when you were talking about if you look at our feeds and versus other people's feeds, what I thought you were going to say was, we're past the point of trying to talk about, but a fetus is like a baby, but women's rooms and men's rooms should be separate. There's no convincing anymore. There's no argument on the merits. There's no conversation whatsoever. It's only about process. How do we prevent ourselves from being exterminated socially and politically by those who are absolutely not interested in the discussion? There's no discussion between the two sides on the merits of anything. And what astonishes me is how quickly people like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who are even older than we are, adapted themselves to being utter bird brains on the issues of common sense.
That's the incentive structure in Washington. The incentive structure in Washington is not
maintain power.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's it.
Right.
And on that note, I don't know what else you guys have to do, but I think we're taxing probably our
Reaboi's got something to say.
He's got burst.
Yeah. No. I mean, I just wanted to, because now that kind of the three of us are talking, and maybe we had a similar experience. I'm maybe a couple years younger.
You're younger.
But it's this topic that I want to bring up with you guys because I think you may have something to say about it. It's something I've been obsessed with the last several days, and I'm just kind of going crazy about it. Maybe you've seen me tweet. It's in regards to young people today not wanting to drive.
Oh, Cernovich was also tweeting about this.
Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of started this thing, which I've just been noticing. Nobody wants to drive, and nobody really wants to get their license. And I thought that this was crazy because, I mean, I grew up in Jersey. The moment that I got my license,
my birthday,
boom, my birthday,
you go to the DMV. When I heard about the self-driving car stuff, I said,
who wants this?
Why would you want that? You want to drive. Driving's the cool thing. It's the fun thing. Jerry Seinfeld, what could be more of a guy thing than to go to the moon and drive around?
Right. No, it's true. And then I started talking to friends of mine who are a bit younger, who are like, let's say in their late 20s and early 30s. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And they're like, why would you want to drive? You can just Uber. And to me, like, this is a kind of fundamental divide in civilization that is not sufficiently appreciated now. And even, I mean, I've got a sister who's 10 years younger. She's 35. And I asked her about it, and she and her husband both said, oh my God, yeah, of course, we couldn't wait to drive. We were just itching to break the bond between themselves and their parents.
But are you talking, Dave, to people who are in the suburbs and in in other words, driving in the city is a million times worse than it was when we were growing up. Okay.
Yeah. No. That's a special case. I mean, I've got a lot of friends who grew up in the city and maybe they didn't get their license until later and blah, blah, blah. But the city equivalent would be, you're of a certain age, you get yourself on the subway and you just start exploring and you just go independently. It's a different milieu. I get it.
Why do I think this is the same conversation about how the same generation also seems to be having a lot less sex, and that's what the reports are.
100%.
And instead, are replacing it with
fantasy.
Well, with online behaviors or texting behaviors, which
they're spectating.
Seems like a sort of shadow of let's say really driving. So yeah. And I certainly wouldn't. I need some random Uber driver to do it for me, but yeah.
David, I need you to hook this incredibly incisive point into the previous 45 minutes. It's not obvious to me
Oh, no, it's not obvious to me either. But if put on the spot, I just figured I'd have you guys.
I'll give it to you right now. Ready?
Like you guys are here.
You want me to tie it together?
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Okay. If you're brought up as these kids have been brought up in a world totally disengaged from empirical reality, you're going to be totally disengaged from empirical reality.
You're not out on the street.
This generation is being brought up on a narrative, and I bet you that the distinction is which part of the country they're brought up in, whether they want to drive or not want to drive, et cetera. They've been brought up entirely in a narrative that does not connect in any way to anything observable. And so experiential life is something that's alien and frightening, and it's alienating to them. I just made it up, and it's excellent.
Okay. No, I don't think that's bad. I don't think that's completely off base. But as a counterpoint, a lot of the folks who are young are very, very right wing, and it's one of those things. It's like I mean, I had a poll up. How many of you know a young person who doesn't want to drive? And I thought, I mean, I had no idea what result I would get, but it was like 78%. 78%.
Even if you're right wing, but David,
Yeah.
because I'll give you an analog to this.
Sure.
About 10, 15 years ago, I started getting a lot of calls from like concerned evangelicals that this new generation of evangelicals, why are they less and less supportive of Israel, right? And they had all kinds of theories. My theory was and remains because they've been brought up in the shadow of Oslo, and their entire lives, these are good, normal, decent kids with good instincts and good upbringings about what right and wrong is, and they want to do the right thing. And their entire narrative is that Israel's oppressing a minority that just wants to have suffrage. Okay, and even the guys who aren't saying that are using those words. They're using the Palestinian narrative terms like West Bank, et cetera, which have become normalized. And so then you grow up a little bit, and so you're at least struggling with that reality. So it's inconsistent with everything else that they may believe, but they're trying to fit what they believe into this narrative. So I'm just saying it's not impossible for you to be young and conservative in many ways, but still you have not been. Maybe you're getting mixed messages about reality. Maybe you're not totally in the world.
So cognitive dissonance is easier to live with when more of your life is virtual, because there are no consequences to things not adding up.
I would totally buy that, for sure.
So just for what it's worth, Jeremy messaged me before we sign off, suggesting Jeremy, our intrepid producer, maybe this generation is used to being spoon-fed. They don't want to accomplish on their own. And in fact, they have really been, to a large extent, he's not saying this part, taught to distrust people who do things on their own, as opposed to having it set up for them. They like safety. They want to stay at home. They want to follow the rules. They don't want to take a chance getting sick. Versus the classical American conception of rugged individualism, that's frowned on.
Right. Well, for sure. I mean, to a certain extent, I think that's true because look, anytime we get in the car, we've got like a 2-ton, piece of machinery that we have.
Come on,
control.
what did your mother tell you?
What?
It's a weapon.
Right.
It's a weapon.
No. I mean, at any moment, whatever, God forbid, at any moment, anything, someone can hit you and, I mean, it's, you take your life in your hands. I mean, there's a reason why, you're driving home, like the other weekend, I'm driving home Alligator Alley at midnight when there's no stops and no gas stations and whatever. Like, when you get there, call. That's
a place in my a section of
Oh yeah,
Miami,
Alligator Alley is 75, and it goes from Naples to Fort Lauderdale, and there's nothing. If you get stuck on Alligator Alley, you're out of luck.
You're on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own.
We're going to leave you on your own, Colemanators. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Jeff and David. We have justified the return engagement of this schmoozathon. And with God's help, we'll do it again soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.